It's a moment of attraction. There's electricity, a feeling of desire, the feeling of excitement and anticipation even for the slightest touch. Rachel Wotton calls it skin hunger, and that's who I'm talking to in this episode.
My name's Rachel Wotton. I am a sex worker. I live on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation here in the inner west of Sydney. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional landowners on which we're doing this interview here today.
Sex and disability is something that isn't talked about enough. From the lack of realistic sex education for people with disabilities in schools to how that translates in the real world. Sex and sexuality for people with disabilities is often something that's unspoken.
I am currently a PhD candidate at Western Sydney University. My master's by researchers at Sydney Uni. So my master's was around sex workers who work in New South Wales, Australia, who provide services to clients with disability. And now my PhD is around exploring the experiences of people with disability who access sex worker services in Australia. And I'm wanting to really prioritise the voices of people with lived experience.
My name is Susan Wood, and we talk about the misconceptions around sex workers and sex for people with disabilities, and how her work is helping her prioritise disability and sexuality as part of her PhD.
People speculate so much, there's lots of discussion in the media, but there isn't a lot of kind of academic research around what's important to people with disability who choose to see sex workers. I guess use my privileged position to be able to navigate the university system and to give a platform and to try to make it as easy as possible for people to share their experiences and their stories in whichever way they want.
We are talking about something that is not really a taboo topic, but it's more like it's just not talked about.
When people have seen the documentary that I'm in called Scarlet Road, people are like, oh, it's not like I don't support people with disability being sexual, I've just never thought about it. So I'm really proud to be part of the start of those discussions. I kind of think that it's ridiculous in this year and that we're still trying to get people to see other people holistically. People should have choices and options and equality, and until people are seen as sexual human beings and be supported in their rights and their options sexually, then we're not there yet. And the reality is that sex work is just one of many options. So seeing a sex worker providing services to people with disability is just one of many options for people. We know that millions of people with disability are in loving relationships, they're married, they're parents, they're on the dating scene, they choose to be asexual, lots of different relationships, they're happy to just be playing the field, but just equal to everyone else in society. Choosing to go see a sex worker for a multitude of different reasons shouldn't be dropped off the table just because other people find it icky.
Yeah, as you mentioned in your introduction, we're in the inner west of Sydney at the moment, and I found out via watching the Scarlet Road that New South Wales has decriminalised sex work, which is actually something that was rare, right? Because yes. New South Wales is the only state that it doesn't?
No,
correct me.
So in 1995, the regulatory laws for sex work in New South Wales became decriminalised in most areas of sex work. Mm-hmm. Since that time, a couple of years ago, 2017, I think it was, 2019? Oh, COVID is just like... It was a few years ago. Northern Territory also brought in decriminalisation. New Zealand in 2003 brought in decriminalisation. And very recently, so did Victoria. So they're a 2-year slow development of bringing in decriminalisation. So they've started that process by repealing a whole heap of laws recently. So the difference with New South Wales, where I'm completely authorised to be able to operate from my own home, from a rented property, from a hotel, motel, I can go and visit clients, as soon as I move across that invisible line into Victoria, until they have started the decriminalisation process. But previously, with a very prescriptive, legalised system, I had to be registered like a dog. There was no benefits to it. They just wanted to know. So I couldn't work from my own hotel. I couldn't work from my own home. I had to actually go to clients' homes or clients' hotels. So even if I was staying in a hotel, I mean, there is no point, rhyme or reason for this. So I could have a hotel room, but my client would have to hire their own hotel room, even if it was a hotel room next door to mine. Yeah, it was completely legal for me to provide services in their hotel room. But if he can, or she or they came into my hotel room, suddenly criminalised. So it's a really positive step forward that Victoria is doing that, and sex workers around Australia and around the world. By having decriminalisation, it means that it's a step towards recognition that it's a legally recognised occupation in Australia, but it's how it's regulated and how we can operate that is the issue. I always say as soon as I close the door and it's just the client and myself, that's the easiest part of our jobs and it's the most fun. Yeah, and I've met some amazing people through my life and work through being a sex worker. So either other sex workers, former or current, also our clients. I've met some amazing clients. I've gone to some amazing places. My most favourite tip that I've ever received was from a man who gave me $5, and I knew that he had saved for months and months and months just for like a half-hour sexual massage. And so that $5 tip means just as much, or if not more, than, you know, if someone's giving me a large tip.
As I said before this interview, I've watched Scarlet Road like maybe 5 times now. And then I went down an absolute rabbit hole with all of your media. But for the people who haven't watched the documentary yet, or do you want to talk about, you've got people who are sex workers, you've got people with disabilities, and these are 2 marginalised communities. So what are some of the misconceptions, or what are some of the things people get completely wrong about your work?
There's lots of misconceptions about both sex workers and people with disability. I was one of the co-founders of Touching Base from late 2000 to late 2020. Touching Base has always brought the 2 marginalised communities together to support people's sexual rights, labour rights, and to provide a platform for the 2 marginalised communities to speak. And since then, I've been really focused on my PhD. There's a lot of similarities. So either people think that both sex workers and people with disability are either asexual or hypersexual. That that sex workers are either like numb to the core, or that we're just hypersexual sex maniacs, and nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, there's the bell-shaped curve, so people in society fit at either end, either extreme and in the middle. But I think I always say that sex workers pick a eye color, pick a hair color, pick a body shape, pick a gender, pick a sexuality, pick a religion, pick a nationality and a heritage, and yeah, there you go. You've got sex workers and you've also got our clients. And also there's this whole othering thing of like, oh, there's sex workers over there, and then there's their clients, and then there's a subgroup of like clients with disability. And I'm like, well, sex work's actually a really good occupation for someone with disability. There needs to be an awareness that there will be sex workers who are living with disability. I'm very proud of being the first sex worker that the Australian Churchill Trust has supported as a fellowship with. So I know that probably wasn't very easy, but I've tried to do them proud. And that was around looking at training programs for sex workers in different parts of Europe. So that also included speaking to different people who do sexual assistance, which is a type of it's like sex work, but it's just for people with disability, and it's people identify as sexual assistants, not sex workers, even though some sex workers in those countries become trained up to be sexual assistants. So if people are interested, then they can look at that report. And I also did a book chapter in a Routledge book of sex and disability recently, so there's a link to that on my website.
Do people feel sorry for you?
Oh, some do. On the opposite end, because of Scarlet Road, I've got all sorts of ludicrous things of like, you're an angel, and oh, you should be like Australian of the Year, and like you should be nominated for this, and you're so kind. I'm like, yeah, you're rolling your eyes, so I roll my eyes out of my head all the time. Yeah, I'm like, I'm just doing my job. Like, it's not a pity fuck. Like, people are paying me for this, and we've negotiated this. And I say no to clients all the time. I think that's one of the things I talk about a lot, that even friends have been surprised when I'm like, I often say no. No, I don't provide that service. No, I'm not available today. No, I'm not available at that time. No, I won't provide that service for that price. You can see my rates on my website. No, I'm not interested in providing that. No, you live in an area where I'm not traveling to. No, I'm not coming there this month. So no, I can't extend this booking. I mean, there's lots of yeses. I think my clients who I do see, I really appreciate them choosing me. I feel very honoured to be part of their sexual journey, and I'm very happy to see new people. That's one of the questions I get. Do you just see clients with disability? No. As long as it's a mutually consenting interaction, I will see all sorts of different people. If people approach me, and I'm happy to provide the service that someone's looking for, and the services are quite varied. I think going back to the myths as well, people think it's all wham bam, thank you ma'am, and it's like a whole porn show. It's like, no. No, there's a whole range of things. There are some sex workers who don't provide vaginal sex, intercourse. People prefer doing sexual massages, what we know as rub and tug. So it may just be masturbation and nude massage and body slides. I like doing them too. I mean, you can see, I've got my massage table here in my workspace. I really enjoy that. And some people, for lots of reasons, may not want to roll around on the bed.
People might think that you're giving discounts left, right and centre just because they're people with disabilities, or for free, and obviously not.
No. People do ask about discounts. Look, I do know some sex workers who are like, show me your pension card or, your concession card, and they will give 10% discount or things like that. So, but if it's not on someone's website, then generally it's not going to be happening. If it's not on someone's website, then generally it's not going to be happening. My concession is that I travel further for people. So someone who doesn't appear or hasn't approached me and said that they have a disability, just a regular Joe Blow who's found me online and said, will you come to Liverpool? I'd be like, no. No, I will not. I have a workspace here in the Inner West, and you can come to me. There's free parking for 2 hours during the day. If someone is living in supported accommodation and they have complex support needs, and it's easier and more comfortable for me to go visit them, then I will.
In your documentary, it was very fascinating looking at the training component where you were discussing people who are non-verbal and the misconception around consent and how could they possibly give consent. Do you perhaps want to talk about blatantly incorrect information about what consent means for somebody with disability?
Oh, completely. I'm just horrified that people have literally said to me, people who work in the disability sector, how can Johnny possibly give consent? I'm like, well, when you assist with him getting dressed in the morning, how does he tell you if he wants to wear the red shirt or the blue shirt? And they're like, oh, he uses a communication board. I'm like, so therefore he can communicate with you about what his preferences are. So therefore the same can be done with sexual needs, sexual expression, likes, dislikes. People, learn to be able to communicate about these things. But if there aren't any communication boards that include sexual positioning, sex words, even body parts, then how do you expect someone to be able to communicate? You have to be able to make it accessible. So Touching Base did create a communication board about communicating your sexual needs, and it's a physical one that I can show you in a moment. But I believe that they're doing a needs assessment at the moment to update it, or to be able to see whether or not they're doing an electronic copy. So that'll be very exciting. But people use iPads all the time, and people use different ways of communicating. You know, there's some people who yes is thumbs up, thumb down is no. Some people do the blinking, so one blink is yes, two blinks are no. Some people can use hand signals. There's a whole multitude of ways. I think if someone is supporting someone to see a sex worker, as a support worker, as a carer, parent, any person who is assisting with that communication and actually transporting someone to a place or welcoming a sex worker to someone's home, it's their responsibility, their duty of care, to be able to also tell someone like me, who is providing the service, how the person likes to communicate. So, and to be aware that if someone is in their wheelchair and they have their communication board in front of them, when you're naked in bed, you do not have that. Yeah. So you also have to have other options, either like print out versions that laminated. You can't just move the big board that's in front of you in the wheelchair like into the bed.
Just between you.
Yeah. But, yeah. I know, but people just don't think of those things. I've had support workers bring clients to me for their appointments and then forget to take their communication boards out of their bag. And so I've slowly had to, you ask closed questions. If people are non-verbal, then you're finding out how they say yes, no. And so you can say, did you bring your communication board with you today? Or folder, it's often a folder. And if someone says yes, then it'd be like, is it in your backpack? Yes. Would you like me to get it out of the backpack for you? Yes, no. So you have to do that. But that's taking up part of like the hour that they're with me. Whereas the support worker could have done that in the first place. In terms of things that people think about or miss, I sometimes think that people forget about cleaning people's teeth, but also sometimes people go overboard with the aftershave, so it's the other way around. I always say, if you want us to lick or kiss a part of your body, don't put like aftershave on it. So it's like they're all over the nipples or over the neck. Yeah. Don't do that. So some people are brilliant and some people just get a bit flustered. So I think it's about just, us talking about it helps to normalize things. And also I think it's about giving people autonomy. So instead of like, I'm going to do this and get you ready, it still has to be like, well, what would you like to be, how do you want me to assist you for today? So people may want special underwear. Sometimes people are really sweet and bring gifts. So beforehand, it's like, well, let's go to the candle store beforehand. Or some people have brought, moisturizing lotion so that I can either rub it on them or they can rub it on me. All sorts of different things like that. Or there's a favorite bottle of wine or champagne that we may like to drink together. I mean, even talking about alcohol, I think people forget that people with disability may want to have a drink. It's like, oh my goodness, there's someone who's non-verbal who, you want champagne? It's like, yeah, it's a really normal part of people's lives to celebrate with different activities like that, including going to the pub, having a drink, when you normalize all these other kind of taboo things, like the idea of, people may want to go skydiving. I know lots of clients with disability who have tattoos, and I just can't even imagine how hard it was to negotiate that, especially if someone is non-verbal as well. And I think good on you. And they're really cool tats sometimes. But a lot of people are like, really? How did that happen? I'm like, because they're adults and they communicated what their preferences are.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because the more we talk about this, the more I'm thinking about how talking about tattoos, talking about sex, talking about relationships, talking about, going that extra mile to like get you gifts or whatever it is, or having a drink. It's almost like people might assume that people with disabilities are children.
Yeah, that infantilization doesn't seem to end for a lot of people. I have this whole theory that I've been talking about recently. It ends because I was talking to a group of American students. I Americanized it for them. So, because we say nappies, but in America diapers. They say diapers. So I have this diaper theory. And because it's rightfully so ingrained that, kids wear nappies or diapers, and you do not, should not ever sexualize children. But I think that people have just got this ingrained thing that as soon as they see a nappy, that they're right back into that asexuality world. Non-sexual beings, don't sexualize them. And people need to realize that the adult incontinence pads when people grow up, and it's something that supports their well-being, it supports their autonomy, and it supports them living the best quality of life that they can. But and also at the other end of the spectrum, when people are aging, when people start to lose more body functions, and therefore they may need to go back to using adult incontinence pads. For some reason, a lot of people have a hard time still recognizing someone holistically as a full adult with full sexual needs if they choose to express it in whichever way they want. So there's nothing worse than hearing about how someone doesn't even have access to lube when they're reliant on third parties support to go do all their shopping. So the idea of like going to Coles and buying bread, milk, baked beans, salmon, cat food for their pets, and a tube of lube, and people are like, we're not doing that. It's like, why not? What's the difference between like a tube of moisturizer, some shampoo, conditioner, or a tube of lube? And I just keep coming back to this. You would have heard it in other things I've spoken about, but I don't like this whole us and them mentality, because the continuum of disability is quite broad, and I always think if people started thinking about we're all one car accident away from being in the exact same position, you're waking up in going to rehab unit, and suddenly you're reliant on third-party support and care. How would you like to be treated? What would you like people to be doing and acting around you? And what kind of barriers would really piss you off if someone suddenly said, no, you can't go there? Or like, no, you're a dirty person for thinking that you need to do that. Like, those days are gone. It's like, au contraire. I think it's not our right to say yes or no, as long as it goes back to consent. As long as it's mutually consenting, you're not hurting anyone. And I have real trouble where people put too much time and energy trying to stop people from having fun, and it's really just stopping someone putting a smile on someone else's face.
Equal opportunity is not just a phrase contained to issues like employment. It encompasses all aspects, including the fact that people with disabilities should be able to talk openly and honestly about sex without feeling like society doesn't take it seriously. And even in your workspace now, you've got a hoist that's above the bed, because you are also going above, it's something that people need. So you're providing that.
Yeah, look, my hoist is a homage to Mark, who was in the documentary, and when he passed away, I'm still friends with Elaine and Spag, and they're such wonderful people. And I approached them a year or so after Mark's passing and offered to buy his hoist, and paid for it to be removed from his bedroom at their home when they were ready to redecorate it. And so I brought it here and got it serviced, and it's up. And some of his friends are also clients or were clients of mine, and so everyone knows it was Mark's hoist. So it's a nice kind of living legacy to talk about Mark, and he's always here with us. So yeah, it's really nice to be able to offer that. And I'm lucky I work and live in a council area, which allows me to be able to offer this place to some other friends of mine who are sex workers if they have clients. Or sometimes one of my clients may always say, do you want to see someone else? Different body shape, different gender, different services to me. So sometimes I can introduce other sex working friends of mine to my clients, and then they just rent the space from me. Yeah. And I wish more sex services premises would invest. So there's only a couple of places, so people who are listening to this may know them as brothels. But collectively, sex services premises, that includes massage parlours. So there's a couple in Sydney who have hoists. Sometimes they don't always work. Sometimes the lift doesn't work. I just think it's imperative that if you advertise it, and more places should become more accessible. And there's an accessible place that I know of that has a lift, but has never put in a ceiling hoist. And I think that it's important. It's not good enough to get someone to a premises and then say, well, they seem happy like getting the service in their chair. One, if the sex worker's trying to have sex with someone in their wheelchair, then that's an occupational health and safety issue. But two, it's not they're not having equal opportunity. People like to be lying next to you in the bed. You put all the energy into creating beautiful rooms in this sex services premises. Like, keep going. Allow more people to roll around. Yeah.
Part of the documentary, and we were talking about you do training sessions. And
I did when I was with Touching Base. So I was the training coordinator and helped co-facilitate some of the other training workshops. So they have two. The sex worker one is PDAT, so Professional Disability Awareness Training, and then the one for people working in the disability sector, the acronym SPAT, Service Provider Awareness Training. Just happened like that. So you'd have to go to Touching Base to see what they're doing. I know that they're doing more things online. COVID really, started that up. So, but I still do training and in-services independently. So if there's organisations and different areas where people want me to speak at conferences or in-service training, universities, I've definitely been doing different things like that. So I really love being able to speak with people who are in the disability sector, and people have lots of questions, and people are trying their best to support people, and I think it's come a long way. So back from the beginning of 2000, when there was a different group of people talking about and formulating what ended up becoming Touching Base, there was definitely a lack of policies. There was a lot of ignorance, a lot of people holding those myths that we talked about, and stigma and the discrimination. And now people have come a long way. And you see it in lots of other areas. So you can't ask that. This series on TV, I think, has been great. There's Dateable Me, I think is the one on TV. And then there has been Love on the Spectrum, 2 series there that got picked up by Netflix. There's Sexpo, the version of that Northcott does, which is Feel the Vibe. I mean, even Sexpo is, like, when it travels around Australia, is one of the most accessible places because it's brightly lit. There may be erotic dancers and strippers on stage and porn stars walking around in different booths. I recommend where people are like, where do we start? We need to talk about sex and sexuality. I'm like, well, why don't you do a day outing with a whole heap of people that you support and go to Sexpo if they would like, give it an option. And because it's a big expo, then a lot of people have the opportunity to buy products and clothing and equipment and vibrators and dildos and all sorts of different things at a discounted rate. And one of the biggest problems that we do have is that sex shops are notorious for being up or downstairs. And so I think that needs to be addressed a bit more because it's not accessible at all. one of the things that I often do with some of my clients is that I don't have all kinds of vibrators or sexual aids, but there has been some that I do have that I'm like, well, why don't we try this? And so sometimes, like, I know that you interviewed Candace and Arlen from the sexuality unit at Royal Rehab, which they're great, and that unit just needs to be funded forever. It's so important and so fabulous. And so I think one of them recommended a certain type of vibrator that had a bit more accessibility, and so I was like, oh, that's really good. So I actually bought it and have been able to like help a couple of clients like practice to see if it's applicable to them. And yeah, so I've always got my eye out on more accessible kind of sexual aids.
Yeah, I guess that's also something that people don't really think about as well, is that you help people become more independent just by helping them be able to assist with a sex aid or something like that, so then they can maybe one day do it by themselves.
Yeah, look, there's a whole wealth of roles that sex workers can play in people's lives. Sometimes it's just about becoming more confident about themselves, and also finding out what their bodies can and can't do, or after accident or injury, adapting what they previously did and what was important to them sexually, or finding out now what the sensitive spots of their body are. Sometimes it's about really kind of an extension of sexual education. So if people have never seen labias, you know, some of the porn magazines still do all this airbrushing. So people have never seen the intricacies of what a woman's body may look like. You know, the inner and outer vulva, you know, labia, you know, that it's, you know, people are like, you know, show me your vagina. I'm like, well, actually, technically, you know, the vagina is the canal. So people, you know, people don't know where the clitoris is, but also, you know, lots of hair, no hair, you know, it's all very different when it's 2D. When it's 3D and right there in your face. And so people want to learn. People want to learn how to touch someone, pleasure someone. People, you know, may like big nipples, big breasts, little breasts, you know, large ass, small ass, long legs, you know, long hair. Everyone's different, but it's yeah, sex is not like just fireworks and, you know, rainbows. There's a lot of, so even like, you know, negotiating and learning about cross-contamination, like just guys in general, you know, if they wank with their right hands and then they try to like slide a condom on with their right hand, I'm like, oh, all the pre-cum's now on the outside of the condom. No one talks about this. Sex ed just doesn't seem to include that. So the roles of sex workers can be, you know, quite varied. So, and for some people, for a very small amount of people, sex work may be their only option in life to explore their sexual expression and sexual identity. For lots of people, clients may come and go for all different reasons. For some people, it just may be the start of their journey. So finally, people have been given permission to be seen and supported as a sexual human being, but they can also practice their dating skills. So there's people who I've seen who they've had their first sexual experience with me, and then they may have seen me a few more times, and then I may have referred other sex workers to them that they've chosen to see, and then they've started dating. And then, you know, there's one client of mine who his mum came up to me at a conference that I was speaking at, and she was like, hi, do you remember me? I'm such and such's mum. I'm like, oh yeah, hi, how are you going? Haven't seen you for years. She's like, oh, I'm doing well. I just wanted to let you know that such and such, he's engaged to be married, and it's such a delight. You know, it's just really lovely that you were part of someone's life and their sexual journey for even a short amount of time.
Is this person with a disability?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something that just came into my mind, which is something that I always, like, I think about a lot, is sex education schools for people with disabilities. And it's lacking.
Yeah, there's a lot of segregation still, and that's one of the areas that in society that we need to all do better. This whole idea of like, well, we're going to do sex ed for everyone, but X, Y, and Z, like you'll never need this, so you can leave the room. I think it's horrific that this still goes on. But there's definitely been an increase in some areas where more accessible resources. So that's one of the things you would have seen on my website, that I have started to collate different resources, both here in Australia and overseas, that people can use, because it's always been one of those questions of like, where do I start, or how do I do this, or like, where do I go, where's the information? But like Family Planning New South Wales has some great resources. SECA or SECA, SECCA over in Western Australia has some great resources, and they're all in easy read format as well. There's lots of different places where people can start, and Untold Desires is the most beautiful documentary. Sarah Burton was the director, Australian. It came out in 1994. It won a whole heap of awards. She's also a Churchill Fellow, and it's just as relevant today as it was when it first came out. And it's a whole range of people with disability talking about themselves as sexual human beings and their experiences, both good and bad. And it's just a beautiful documentary. So I always kind of see Scarlet Road as a kind of like collect the set. Like you should see Untold Desires first, because it's important to hear the voices of people with disability first, front, foremost. And I think that the voices of Mark and John, especially my two clients who are in Scarlet Road, their voices are the loudest and the strongest, and will continue to reverberate with people even though they've both passed away.
Something I was going to bring up, which we've already talked about a couple of times in passing, people might also assume that, or might think that, parents are not supportive of their children with adult children with disabilities seeking a sex worker or just wanting to be a sexual person. But you've had experiences with amazing parents. Do you perhaps want to talk about it a little bit more?
Yeah, look, the parents that I've met are just amazing. I really, have created some really beautiful kind of, working relationships or friendships with some of the parents sometimes over the years. And they're remarkable because really they've gone against everything that society kind of expects or demands, or like all of the stigma and discrimination that is packaged with sex work. They've gone above and beyond and gone, no, my adult offspring has said that they would like to experience this. They're not able to be in the dating world for whatever reason, or currently this is what they've said that they want. So they've taken it upon themselves to either seek out sex workers themselves, or they've gotten support, or they've advocated on behalf and with their offspring to be able to make it happen so that their support team can assist. So it's been really lovely. Yeah, when it works really well. But one of the things with parents is that they feel very alone. They feel like they're the only ones. I've had parents who years and years ago have said to me that, it took, talking to 3 psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, all people saying, you're a dirty woman for thinking about this or trying to get this. And so there was a lot of relief, and it's a real joy to be able to provide services that makes my client happy, which in turn makes their parents happy that they're happy. And I think that's all any parent wants for their child, is to grow up and to be able to experience different joys and different experiences and to be happy. So yeah, it's been a real joy. But a lot of them have found it a very lonely journey. More and more allied health and support workers and people in different spheres are starting to appreciate people's sexual rights, but obviously we're not there yet. So, and especially with the difficulty, should we name the NDIS?
Oh, listen, it's going to be the next question that I ask you, because why don't we start talking about it?
In the last year, also, so first of all, before the NDIS, I was providing services to clients who were able to use their state or local disability funding packages to be able to save up to be able to pay me to provide them services. So this whole idea, it's never happened before, is ridiculous. I mean, I've got a news article from the Mercury down in Tasmania where it was talking about support workers were taking certain gentlemen with disability to brothels. I've got, you know, different news articles and, you know, different personal experiences and invoices from years and years ago that I have invoiced places to be able to provide services. So it's definitely happened. The premise of the NDIS was that it's supposed to support people to have an ordinary life equal to others. So to just cut people off and ignore them holistically, like our sexual lives, our sexual identity, our sexual being, our sexual expression is an integral part of anyone's life. So if we're looking for equality, to have an ordinary life equal to anyone else, then, you know, you have to keep going and be true to form. Also, the NDIS premise was that no person would be worse off when they rolled over into their NDIS packages. So if people were seeing sex workers before and utilising some of their funding to do so, then I think it's abhorrent that they're now worse off. And I've definitely lost clients because of this. And people talk to me all the time about the difficulties. Some people have got really good support teams. So they have NDIS coordinators, NDIS like support workers, good plan managers. When everyone works as a team and respects the autonomous decisions of the person, the individual, the participant, using NDIS terms, then it works great. When people go outside their lane, so I've seen judge and jury, like, you know, in NDIS plan managers or coordinators be judge and jury and get way out of their lane, and they're like, the NDIS won't fund this, therefore you can't put it in there. But the idea that people are being refused to even write it in as one of their aims or their goals or what increases their health and well-being is just horrifying. To be denied that level of autonomy and respect, where someone's saying, I have previously done this and this has increased my capacity, my sense of self, sense of purpose, it's decreased my tremors, it's decreased my pain levels. There's all these other reasons that people may seek the services of a sex worker. For people to say, no, you can't do that because we believe this, it's like, you are out of your lane. So I think that's a big problem. The good thing is that through the tenacity of the woman with MS who took it to the AAT, the tribunal, where the magistrate didn't quite get it right. So I know that the discussion, all the legal stuff, everything that was put forward to the AAT, and some of it was held in confidence and private, but he screwed it up and said, like educated, especially trained sex therapists, so everyone was in a flap because it wasn't sex therapy. The woman was never asking for a sex therapist. It was very clear it was about sex work. So the sex therapists were all up in arms going, we don't touch our clients. Sex workers like myself were like, this is wrong. Like, you know, we know that this was about sex work. And everyone else in the disability sector were like, what does this mean for us? The NDIS or the NDIA shot themselves in the foot really, because they didn't agree with the amount, which was a small amount relatively to people's packages. They didn't agree with it, so they took the case to the federal court and lost. And that ruling is brilliant. It's really beautifully written. It's not often that I would encourage people to read any of the rulings brought down by the federal court, but it's easy to read, it's beautifully read. It recognises that sex workers, we learn with our clients, so everyone's individual, so you don't necessarily have to have had training per se. A lot of us have had training either like, you know, developed through like the one-day training with Touching Base, or through life experience, through friends, family, lovers, partners, other clients. we learn about how to interact, how to adapt services, communication, how to support people's mobility needs through life. So there was a real recognition and acknowledgement that it was really about sex work, and the benefits that this individual woman received from seeing a sex worker on a regular basis. So that was really good. That woman was given a specific line item. I have, and I've been sharing widely, which I think is important. So, and there's another line item that actually other people, support workers and coordinators, have given to me that I feel comfortable using. There's lots of people who are like, can you hide it? Can you invoice your 1 hour rate by doing 10 hours of this other one? I'm like, absolutely not. No. For many reasons. One, it's lying. Two, it's not recognizing the importance of the work and recognizing that this is actually what you want. It's about empowering people to feel confident about putting things in their plan, and also having these real discussions with the coordinators and the support workers and the plan managers about the recognition that sex work is real work, and that it's, once again, supporting the individual's needs. So the discussion also is like, that has come up in the media, is like, and even from the side of the NDIA, they were like, well, if we support this, then like this means that the maximum ends that we could blow out our budget by this much. I'm like, not everyone needs to use a wheelchair. So you can't say every person with disability who's going to go into the NDIS system is going to need an electric wheelchair. That's ridiculous. Not everyone needs equine therapy. Not everyone needs an iPad. Not everyone needs to have different modifications of their home. Not everyone needs aquatherapy. Not everyone needs to see, physio twice a week. Like, the idea with the NDIS is that everyone has their own pie, and it has the ingredients that fully supports your health and well-being. Like, if someone gets supported for whatever reason, which is reasonable and necessary for them to be able to access sex worker services, this shouldn't, you're thinking as though it's taking away from the pot of money to be able to provide X, Y, and Z that you need. And we should all be supporting individual needs. So yeah, there's literally some of my clients who have seen me for 15, 17 years. Their circle of people that they interact with, and how their disability impacts their autonomy, their movements, their mobility, their communication. They're just not able to be part of that dating world. But I tell you what, they really know why I'm there, and they're really happy that I'm there. But they only literally get to have any kind of contact that is not purposeful in terms of washing, cleaning, transfers, dressing, undressing 4 times a year. So what I say to people is, imagine the last time that you had someone hug you or touch you tenderly or in a sexual manner, and how long ago that was. And now think about 3 months. In 3 months' time, you get it again for 1 hour. That's it. That's it.
We haven't even properly touched on your study and your survey and all of that. Do you want to talk about that? Of course you do. Tell me about it.
Yes. So this is my whole life at the moment, apart from like sex work and doing lovely interviews like this, is that my PhD, as I said before, is about exploring the experiences of people with disability who access sex worker services in Australia. So I have full ethics approval. I'm happy to say it's an online anonymous survey. I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible. I've been working with the Council of Intellectual Disability so that there is participant information sheet and also an easy read version, and also with the survey that there will be pop-up boxes so that there will be the questions and then there will be a plain English version of each of the questions to give someone a little bit more assistance to be able to navigate each of the questions and understand what I'm asking. So there will be, for everyone who participates in Australia, they have to be eligible to do this. They have to be at least 18 years or over. Unfortunately, it's only in English, so people need to be able to read English. People can go into a draw to win one of 4 $100 gift vouchers. I wanted to recognize people's expertise and time and energy and, you know, the generosity of sharing people's experiences. So that will be happening. And then I've also got a call out for between 10 and 20 people to be interviewed. And the reasons for that will be if there's just too many stories, if people have lots of different experiences that they just felt that they had a lot more to say after they finished the survey. Also, if people have things that I didn't include in the survey, but around this topic, then that would be really fabulous as well. So all of that information will be there. Obviously, if you leave your information, your contact details for the voucher, it's not connected to your answers. The survey is done so that they do not get connected at all. And also in terms of if someone fills out the form to say, I'm interested in being interviewed, then the same. Your contact details are not connected at all at any stage. The only requirement for people who want to do the interview separate to the survey is that you can't be a former or current client of mine. So just on the ethical requirements, that's the only difference. So if you recognize my voice and you are a former or current client, or you recognize my name or my picture, then you're going to have to put all your information anonymously in the survey. But if I've never provided services to you and you're comfortable, obviously I have consent forms. Obviously people can withdraw their consent at any time. Obviously that's very important in my whole world. So I'm very excited about being able to do this. One of the things that keeps coming back, and this goes back to the NDIS as well, is like, well, where's the research? Where's the academic stuff? For some reason, like if you collate it in an academic format, it somehow seems real or it's respected. So I'm really mindful of being as respectful as possible to try to do the best I can to really reflect the real lived experiences of people who will take the time and energy to share with me. We don't want sunshine and roses, just that. I know that through my personal experiences with talking with my clients, people have told me some great stories, but people have told me about the barriers that they've faced, the difficulties, the reflections of people in their life who have been a bit discriminatory or stigmatizing, or if they've shared their story with someone and someone has thought worse about them. Like, there's lots of different stories, and so to create meaningful change, I think you always need to consult with the people that it affects. And well, obviously I want to acknowledge that I'm not a person with disability who has paid for sexual services, and I would be fully supportive of a researcher who identified as such to do this. I just felt people have to spend so much time and energy on other areas, as we talked about, like the NDIS or the aged care system. We haven't talked about that much, but people are exhausted trying to advocate for their rights. So I wanted to use my kind of privileged position and the energy I had to create a platform so that people can share their experiences and I can try to best reflect their needs, their desires, their experiences in a way that can be read and spoken about and shared to hopefully down the track create some positive changes. So when people are trying to look at how can we best meet the needs, it's like, well, here you go, I've pinpointed these areas that are lacking, or this is what the experiences of the participants of the survey have said. So these are the areas in training, and this could be like parents, it could be other people with disability, it could be training for sex workers, it could be training for support staff. There's a lot of scope in terms of policies. I mean, a couple of years ago, Touching Base and People's Disability Organisations Australia put out a press release and a call for action for the NDIS to have a sexuality policy. They still don't have that. Why not? And this is not just sex work. This is about being denied access to sex therapy, sexual aids, sex education, lube, condoms, vibrators, you name it. So it's across the board. So hopefully that this can go towards part of the increased conversation and acknowledgement of people as sexual human beings.
Awesome. Yeah. Rachel, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been really good.
My pleasure. We can talk for hours.
Yeah. All right, cool.
You've been listening to Have the Nerve, a podcast by Spinal Cord Injuries Australia. You can find information on Rachel's study, including the starting date and participant information, at pasa-research.com.au. And you can find information about Rachel at rachelwotton.com. That's RACHELWOTTON.com. This podcast has been written, recorded, and edited by me, Susan Wood. Logo art by Kobe Ann Moore. We'll be linking everything we've discussed in this episode in the show notes of the podcast. I'm also really keen to do a follow-up Q&A episode with questions submitted by you. If you would like to submit a question, follow the link in the show notes to the episode, or you can go to bit.ly/Have the Nerve Rachel Wotton, one word. If you like this episode and Have the Nerve in general, show us some extra love and give me a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And tell 2 of your friends and 1 total stranger. You can also find Spinal Cord Injuries Australia on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Thank you for listening.